topic that our next presenter is going to present on is project management insights. My experience in designing and executing an emergency response plan during floods and cholera outbreak. The topic is my experience in designing and executing an emergency response plan during floods and cholera outbreak. So at this juncture, I'll introduce the presenter to you. Munyaradzi Kadzimu is a certified project management professional, PMP, and has been a member of PMI since 2016. He has volunteered for the PMI Zimbabwe chapter as communications manager, and then as Vice President Marketing and Communications, which was later restructured, and he held the marketing portfolio September 2017 to May 2019. He holds an MBA, ISAMI, postgraduate studies in project management, as well as applied strategy. He's also a member of the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, UK, with which he holds a graduate diploma and for which he part-time lectures. Currently, he works with the International Humanitarian Association, Medicine Sans Frontières / Doctors Without Borders as its deputy logistics coordinator for the Zimbabwe mission. His work experience is mainly in the fields of project management, supply chain management, as well as emergency responses. He has previously worked for ZB Bank and NAMPAC Zimbabwe. Over to you, our presenter. Thank you.
Okay, good evening or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the introduction, Faith. And as usual, I'm happy to attend such gatherings because you tend to meet like-minded people, and also you put faces to the names. Usually some of the people you'd have interacted one way or the other. So today I think I'm happy because I met Faith in person and also Emmanuel. Yeah, so I'm happy about that. Yeah, my background, the field I'm coming from is humanitarian or NGO if you want. Emergencies, I think, is what I'm primarily doing for the past close to 10 years. So if I get a chance to share with others, especially project management professionals, I try as much as possible to grab the chance to share, because I think we have equal representation in terms of, I think for most people, what comes to mind when you speak project management, it's easy to visualize a software rollout, it's easy to visualize a road construction, a dam construction, because yeah, there's lots of activities on that side, but there is also equally yeah, much activity from the NGO side as well. So when we talk emergency, it includes floods, it includes disasters like typhoid, displacement of people because of war situation. It includes even things like malnutrition and also some disease outbreaks like measles, for example. So I think in order to jump into it, it's good if I can contextualize my discussion just to say what is an emergency, what is a disaster, or these terms so that we can speak the same language. Dictionary definition of emergency is a serious or unexpected and often disastrous situation requiring immediate action. This is what we are talking about: floods, landslides, cyclone. A disaster is a hazard that has occurred resulting in significant physical damage or destruction, loss of life, drastic change to the environment, and the event may usually overwhelm local capacity, necessitating a request to a national or international level for external assistance. Some of the disasters, it affects like maybe in our case, the cyclone. You can't expect the people in Chimanimani, for example, to help themselves. They need external help because they are a bit overwhelmed, because it affects the areas that they would have ordinarily gone to for their own assistance, self-assistance. Humanitarian aid, I think, is assistance provided to save lives, alleviate suffering, and maintain human dignity. I'm just making an effort to make this distinction because I think we tend to generalize, especially in our case, when we say NGO, it usually maybe refers to sort of one thing, but deep down, it's not. We can split between humanitarian aid and development aid. Humanitarian aid is often distinguished from development aid because it focuses on the immediate relief of suffering caused by natural or man-made disasters. Whilst on the other hand, development aid, that is focused on removing the root cause of poverty or vulnerability for the long term. There are phases in an emergency response, and the key ones are disaster management, disaster risk reduction. Second one is disaster preparedness. The third one, which I'm going to focus on, is emergency relief. Those two, disaster risk reduction and disaster preparedness, usually they take place before a disaster strikes. It's like you are trying to prepare for the emergency before it comes. Then emergency relief, disaster is struck, you still have to help each other. And then the other phases, not of interest in terms of my discussion, is reconstruction and development. When we speak of emergency relief, which is the third phase that I'm going to focus on when I say emergency response. So emergency relief phase involves responding to the specific disaster situation. And the main objective of this phase is to provide the necessary aid to meet the immediate and short-term needs of people affected by the disaster. So in order to understand what is it that they need, an initial assessment has to be done that will then enable, to size the situation, what is the nature, what is the scale of the disaster, to what effect have people been affected, who are those in immediate needs, what is the immediate need, what is sort of long-term need that you can then focus on. This helps so that decisions can be made on the immediate short-term needs for the specific situation. If you're looking at a war situation, for example, let's say it's something that just happens overnight. Maybe tension, yes, has been simmering, but if you follow developments from other parts of Africa, I'll try not to use local examples for obvious reasons. If you look, for example, some of the stories, 100 people can wake up dead. It happens, it's an overnight attack. That's the sort of disaster we are talking about. Those people need assistance, they need help. Someone has to step in. Usually someone stepping in has got power because they are neutral, one. So maybe either of the sides will not attack you. So that's why you can be able to assist people. And also the other, if you just take you back a bit backwards, this emergency relief, it doesn't just happen overnight. Usually you would have tried to assess and you know what is coming. Maybe we can talk of our known unknowns to an extent, because you know that, yes, tensions are simmering. Yes, people are likely going to fight. A flood is coming. Usually we know about these things. But then sometimes for one reason or the other, disaster will strike anyway, but you try to reduce its impact, suppose it happens. And if you can push it forward, because disasters are in two parts normally. It can be man-made, it can be natural, like a war situation that's man-made, like a stampede at a stadium that is man-made. If you are then looking at landslides, typhoons, things like that, it's just a natural disaster. It is like that. But there are mechanisms of trying to monitor what could be on the horizon. If we try to draw lessons from the cyclone Idai that the first speaker spoke about, it was known, I think, that a cyclone was on its way. We knew about it. We don't pay as much attention. Maybe we do. People react differently, but it was announced in the media, in the news, weather forecast, cyclone is on its way. Maybe within 3 days, it's expected to hit the land. What's likely to happen? People even calculate the casualties. Suppose it does happen like that. But we are humans, it happens like that always. Even floods. I mean, if you go to some areas like in the Zambezi Basin, that side, they even know that every time when the rains come, their homes will be flooded. But we have our customs, we have our practices. It won't be a time to question why did people not move as such. It's just to focus on restoring the dignity, trying to make sure that those that need medical receive the medical attention. I have taken part in a number of emergencies. So I'm sharing with you my story now, looking at the floods in 2015 in Malawi, because I was there, and also cholera that I've responded to, or part of the team that responded to. So when you look at emergencies of such nature, like we said, some of them are slow onset, others are immediate onset. When you now try to bring in project management, the way we speak about it, how do you do your planning there? How do you collect your requirements? Who do you even consult? Which are your stakeholders? How do you even do the consultation? How do you even identify the stakeholders? Like, okay, it's an area that you've never been possibly, but then there are stakeholders. How do you prepare your budget? Because you don't even know maybe the magnitude of the problem until you're on the ground. How do you even define your KPIs, your performance indicators? How do you plan your schedule? How do you manage procurement in such a case? What do you even need that you have to provide immediately? When lives are disrupted, it's not easy to plan, possibly like other commercial projects, because maybe you have the luxury of time, and it's easy to define even your return, maybe on the dollar invested. You can do such projections. When it's human life, it's very difficult. You can't say $5 is enough as an average. You can't say maybe 200. Any amount that saves a life, I think there's return on investment, because we can't put a dollar value to the life of a person. So I went in January to Malawi just to share. I had a video, but I think as technology is not on our side very much, it's not so much of a problem. You went to a situation, other people are there on the ground already, but also the victims themselves, they are on the ground. They are people, they are also stakeholders, but you also have part of your team, because you are coming from another part of the world. Other people are already there, just like with the cyclone, for example. When you wake up and you are told that, no, the cyclone has affected Chimani, it doesn't mean that until you get there, that's when efforts to assist people will start. It starts as it strikes. So you have to continue. There has to be continuation. There has to be coherence. There has to be collaboration, because it's a pity sometimes if you duplicate what another person has already done, or if you go to the same person asking maybe the same questions, it makes it very difficult. My point here is that sometimes an emergency is tricky. It's a complex situation. You have to manage it very careful, because the person you want to assist, you think you know what they need from a distance, but if you speak to them, they might tell you something totally different. If you see someone maybe with no clothes on, you might say, let me put clothes on, but they'll tell you, I just need some food, then we can start talking, things like that. That's where the complexity comes in. So I went there, but another team had already been there for 2 weeks. There has to be a handover process of what they have achieved, what you are going to come in and do. In most of these cases, which is why I emphasize on the complexity, it depends obviously on the nature of the emergency that is struck, but in most cases, it's not easy, because I think not all of us are designed or can handle sight of another human being suffering. If it's a group and you are reading on the news, it hits you differently, unlike maybe speaking to a person and then they tell you. I had a chance one time to speak to a guy, maybe I can say my friend now, who was affected by civil war in Uganda. When they tell you how he came back from what these errands, and there is no home, there is no parents that he knew, and he has to join a group that is in motion, and for 7 years he's outside of the country. You try to imagine, if I put myself in his shoes, how would I have managed to cope? It's very different. So I think it hits you in a different way, because you see someone suffering, and you know that maybe I'm going to sleep in a bed, but this person cannot even sleep. They don't have blankets. This is the nature of some of the emergencies. Of course, not all of them are like that, but some of them can be as bad as that. So while you are there to help, you might actually be a burden in a sense, or you might also need help yourself psychologically. So what are the priorities in an emergency? Reflecting, having been an emergency, having taken part in an emergency, and also the organization I work with, much of our activity is in the emergency response. These are some of the priorities. Of course, it's not an exhaustive list. Things are changing. But what you pay attention to is, well, you want to do your rapid initial assessment, because this is what can guide you or tell you what needs to be done. But from experience, we know that usually water, sanitation, those are some of the obvious needs, be it a flood situation, be it a war situation, because someone would have been displaced, it can happen. Or if you're looking at a situation like cholera, for example, you have to pay attention to the water, because in as much as maybe it's there, it might actually be the source of the problem in a sense. Food and nutrition, shelter, site planning, health in terms of curative activities, control of communicable diseases and epidemics. It happens usually that when floods hit, there's usually an outbreak of another communicable disease, measles or anything that's easily passed on to the next person. You also need to put in a surveillance system, because usually it doesn't mean that disaster strikes today, then it ends there. Other people maybe are still suffering from the effects. If it's too much rain, water is still flowing in, for example. If it's an earthquake, some people are still trapped. So you want to put in place a surveillance system that can help you to attend what you can see, but also look at those that you cannot see, and also those that might be becoming your HR. And in preparation as well, you need to do a training, but maybe just before, you can do a quick refresher training, because you don't want to send people that are going, like I said, going to be a burden on the field, because you need every resource, and also coordination. So if you do your rapid assessment well, you should be able to gather more or less information like this. I think the first speaker, when he was speaking about military excursions, he spoke about the reconnaissance. So you have people that have to go and gather this information. Which area are we talking about? What is the summary? What is the target population are we speaking about? How many people have been affected? To what geographical expanse have they been affected? Can we do a mapping? Your security, can you even get roads to access them? Your admin issues as well, medical, water and sanitation, your human resources, your logistics, your health and hygiene promotion. It depends, like I said, on the nature of the problem. Some of them can be to do with health practices, and sometimes it's lack of knowledge. So you have to conscientize people in terms of hygiene promotion, food, shelter, non-food items, blankets. Like we said, the idea is to restore human dignity. So you also have to do non-food items, and then other program activities as well. They have to continue, because if you look at today, people have got maybe conditions that they carry already. So in as much as, yes, I'm affected by floods today, but then if I can't access my insulin, that's already a problem in itself. So there still be other activities that have to go on besides the emergence that has struck. Your logical framework, I think someone spoke about assumptions that you have to make. What do you have? What assumptions do you have? Because that can only allow you to have some kind of program. Without assumptions, yeah, it can be very difficult to craft a good response. So if you do assess, what do you pay attention to? Why do we do the assessment? We need to gain an understanding of the situation so that you can know the problems, know their source, what is their effect, and also you can assess the impact of the disaster itself on the population and also on health services, on the infrastructure, and then you decide whether or not to intervene. Because sometimes you have no capacity. So you can't burden or close the space for someone who can step in. So you need to know, can I make a difference? Can I do something? If I can't, maybe all I can do is call for assistance from maybe the next best suited person, organization to do it. I'll just share a bit, for example, just so that you can visualize possibly how I take part from a logistical point of view. When it comes to a cholera situation, I think in our country, for example, we have a health system. Yes, it's burdened, but the system is there. And usually they are committed people. For some of you that travel to the corners of the country, you know that there are people that work for the passion of it just to help the next person. Teachers, healthcare workers, they are there. If I can call it back of the beyond. So you are told, there is a cholera case possibly in one part of the country. Can you come? The invitation is based on your past assistance, not that you can do anything magical, but like we said as well, it happens. It's like a bereavement in a family. You want someone to come and step in. It doesn't mean you don't have capacity as such, but you want someone from another part of the country to come and help you. So you get a call. Can you guys come? But from past experience, you know that if I'm dealing with cholera, I have to take 1 or 2, 3 things. There's water treatment, there's all these things. But I'm not the first on the ground. How is it usually picked up? Just to maybe to give a bit of a background. Someone presents at a health facility, maybe complaining of their stomach. They do the tests, then they discover it's cholera. Maybe that person is still in the institution, or for some reason they could have been discharged, they have gone home. They have to quickly get to that person, know what was the source of it, because it just can't start from nowhere, like an injury, like a bruise. They have to know what is the source, which is where the surveillance is important, so that you quickly stop its further spread. But you also have to attend to this person. So already it's a multi-sectoral approach. It can never be one person doing it. The environmental health who already go to try to test water sources, to check with the community, was there gathering, when did they get it, all these things to try and look at the source. Obviously, the person has to be cared for. If they are still alive, they have to receive attention, but they can't be mixed with any other patient because of the highly contagious nature of the condition. They have to be isolated. So someone has to come in and already start setting up the isolation. So you can take something, maybe tents or whatever, if there is no buildings, to make sure that that person is isolated somewhere there. But while that is ongoing as well, people have to start understanding the magnitude of the problem they are dealing with. Because for those that go for the initial assessment, they might know that it was a gathering of 50 people. So potentially, if they ate or drank from the same source, they could be affected. So you have to put in a system already that starts reaching out to those people. I discussed the other day when we were in a queue coming back, and the people were saying, no, you need to stop and give us your details, your home address, your phone number. The system might look, it's a bit backward, but it's for a reason. I remember talking to one lady. She was like, why are they stopping us after all these stops all the way, and then we come and have to spend 2 hours? It's because one of the passengers could have been a carrier and they could have spread it to you. How do they come to you if they discover? So they have to get all this information, and it's for a purpose. But it's unfortunate, like what the speaker, the opening speaker was saying as well. People don't understand why it's done. They don't know the reason, and they might not comply or assist. So it makes it very difficult. So while one has to follow the contacts, one has to look at the water source, you have to treat it, you have to, it's a multi-sectoral approach. It's cholera can be like that, but pretty much all the emergencies are like that. So if you do your assessment well, you should be able to understand the context, you should be able to understand the crisis, its effect, and know who is where, who is doing what organization is there, what are the needs, because the government or the authorities or any other partner for that matter can have some of the requirements to assist. It can be money, it can be HRI, it can be facilities that they can say you can use this. So if I reflect and link some of the key aspects of project management with an emergency response, there's nothing different in my opinion with a project of a commercial nature with a software rollout. The approach somewhat is the same, only that maybe in some cases you are a bit reactionary or you have the luxury of time, but otherwise the basics, they are the same. If you look at integration management, you want to come up with a plan at the end of the day. Whilst on the other sections, whilst on the other projects, you can be able to plan, to have sessions. In this case, you have to plan on your feet. So there's room for agile project management. You plan as you go along. What you discover, you implement, but then you can change course if it so requires. If you look at scope management, how do you even collect your requirements? Who is your stakeholders? How do you identify them? There are a number of tools that are there. Some are applicable in a commercial project, but some like this, I like the power interest matrix for some of you that have used it. You still pick your stakeholders, only that you are looking at who is interested, who has got power to affect you. Then you can craft your stakeholder management plan based on that. I also like the field analysis. It's a negotiating tool mainly to look at your stakeholders, but it still applies. The approach is the same, like we said. In terms of communications, it's very crucial, linking it to coordination as well. Looking at Liberia, I think this was 2009. When you divide the country, these are all the actors that are there in the area. So obviously there's need for coordination. So you have to have a good communication plan with your staff, with other responders, with your facilities, with the authorities, national, local government, the media, and also the families of those affected and the survivors, because usually they are the first to give assistance. Like what happened in Chimanimani, some of the areas were hard to reach, and people provided bicycles. So you come with a car, but then you can't reach to the other areas. Helicopters were there, but still there is even a limit on where they can reach. Same applies within Malawi. Yeah, I remember we got I think it's a hovercraft that came from South Africa, but it had limits in terms of where you can reach, and we ended up using canoes for the local fishermen. So that's why collaboration is very good. Don't rule out even those lower interest, lower power sort of stakeholders. Anyone has got a role to play. When you throw in your constraints now, it's very difficult, because when you look at the disaster in Philippines, for example, from 3 November to 11 November, about 6,000 people, they died. About close to 30,000 in the end were injured. And I think the cost of that was quantified to about 3 billion. So even whatever government, they still need the resources. And the plan is very crucial. If you look, for example, at some of the disasters that struck, like Katrina, I think right now there are still debates in America. It's a first world country. They have the money, no doubt, but then they didn't handle it very, very well. So it's not an easy terrain, so to speak. And also your risk management, I think you approach it more or less the same way like any other project. But here, I think you are paying attention to the vulnerability and the impact. You know the risk. Okay, there's a likelihood that such a disaster will happen. There's a natural disaster, there are floods, there's a cyclone, maybe a war situation. But then what is the people's vulnerability? Vulnerability can be different, because a same magnitude earthquake affecting, for example, Harare and affecting Joburg, the casualties can be different. That is the vulnerability. The impact that it has is very different. That makes it very difficult now when you are approaching the constraints, or even looking at procurement. Lessons learned, these are what guide us, because you develop on how you intervened this time, how can you develop, so that you keep further developing, which is a key aspect again of project management. What we know is that assessments are not easy at all. You need someone maybe with experience, with training as well, and it's a team effort normally. While this good information does not guarantee a good program, poor information almost certainly does guarantee a bad one. So you need to plan as much as you can. Assessments can be time consuming and require lots of staff. both to collect and analyze the information. So as such, make sure you just gather what you need. It's no point collecting information that will not help you or that you can't analyze. I concur also with the engineer. Keep it short. I will adjust. I will not say simple. He said keep it short and what stupid. So I've learned. That's a takeaway for me today also. So avoid as well assessment fatigue. Don't go to people verifying facts, asking the same information, because this is someone that is in pain. This is someone that is suffering already. You go today, you want to count the number of people, you go again the next time. It's a bit unfair. Key lesson again, let's avoid the spirit of the Titanic, that it will not happen to us. There's no need to prepare, because what we have is the latest technology, latest resources that have been used to make this. We know the events that might hit us. Let's prepare. We need to have a plan so that we avoid what happened with the Titanic. 4 days into the voyage, I think for those that are like me as well, that like even aircraft investigations, you see that some of the latest ones are the ones that cause problems. And some of them are simple problems, human error. Someone just decides not to check that, okay, the fire extinguisher was changed, or that the gas cylinder is not there. Things like that, and problems do happen. So don't make assumptions. Forewarned, forearmed, to be prepared is half the victory, like Miguel said. Thank you very much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Technology did let me down a bit, but thank you.